from October 25th to 26th. As a result of several deliberate attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces using American HIMARS and rocket artillery, both the structures and the waterlock of the Belgorod Reservoir Dam were significantly damaged. The strikes were also carried out using drones, which were used to increase the scale of the damage and to attack repair crews who were reinforcing the dam. The enemy does not hide its plans to literally cause a man-made disaster in order to slow down the advance of Russian troops in the area of Volchansk in the Kharkiv region by flooding settlements along the banks of the Seversky Donets River. The militants of the Ukrainian armed forces acted according to the same scenario when they destroyed the Kakhovka Dam in June 2023. On October 24th, yet another so-called international conference of the countries that were participating in the so-called Coalition of the Willing was held in London. So now is it clear to everyone what the expression Coalition of the Willing actually means? Yes, these are indeed the very same regimes that, without hesitation, started drooling at the mere thought of just how much money they could potentially earn from this situation. Right now, during what can only be described as the dying gasp of Zelensky's administration, they are actively looting sovereign assets, coming up with all sorts of deals and arrangements that they might not even have to fulfill or honor later on, because they certainly won't be reporting to Zelensky anymore. However, in the meantime, they can simply pocket the money for themselves, taking advantage of the chaos and uncertainty. As the discussions in London, as we have seen demonstrated, this very coalition of the willing is increasingly shifting its focus to purely military assistance. On the topic of using financial and economic levers to pressure Russia, experts have rightly noted that the attempts by this very coalition of the willing to find ways to help Zelensky and at the same time profit from Russian assets and the income they generate are clear evidence that the resources of the European sponsors of the Kyiv regime are running out. This is also clearly confirmed by the ongoing and active discussions with our generous and supportive allies about the idea of not only imposing but also actually reaching in and grabbing private Russian origin assets amounting to about 25 billion euros, which are also frozen in European banks. Against this backdrop, Russia's objective approaches to resolving the Ukrainian crisis by addressing its root causes are meeting with increasingly broad support. Understanding from foreign leaders and politicians. On October 23rd, at the Agency of Military Science and Memory of Moldova, an exhibition was opened as well. Excuse me, I need to gather my strength to say all this. A direct quote. This refers to the outstanding Romanian figures who were active in Bessarabia during the years from 1918 to 1944, a period that witnessed significant historical events and changes in the region. It is dedicated to Romanian Army Day. That's normal, right? Among such, God forgive me, figures are recipients of Nazi Germany's orders. We hope that it won't come to the final adoption of these bills. Otherwise, it will be impossible to avoid a new dangerous escalation of tensions, both in the occupied Palestinian territories and in the Middle East region as a whole. Overall, it won't be possible. We call on representatives of the World Organization to refrain from effectively condoning this very Ukrainian staging. Not only Ukrainian, I mean the Ukrainian Western staging, which was aimed at discrediting our country. We call on the UN Secretary General, to facilitate a thorough and transparent investigation and to identify those responsible for this monstrous crime committed by the Kyiv regime. With the active support of the Biden administration in April 2024, the United States passed a law on peace through strength in the 21st century. It contains a mechanism for the confiscation of Russian sovereign assets. And the purpose of all these actions was to push, or to be more precise, to deliberately provoke other Western countries, first and foremost the European Union, into, in fact, ultimately confiscating our state reserves. What is happening now is literally a direct consequence of the fact that the European Union followed the lead of the then White House administration, choosing a course of senseless and criminal confrontation with Russia and the reckless pumping of money and weapons into the Kyiv regime. Once again, we warn the European Union against stealing sovereign Russian assets. It will not gain any additional resources, but rather serious long-term problems. As a result, Russia has decided to complete the process of ending cooperation with the Americans under the agreement. The denunciation of this document and its protocols is a signal that any attempts to undermine Russia's military political interests and to unilaterally revise the terms of agreements concluded between our countries, international treaties will receive a firm and consistent response. A substantive dialogue is being conducted between the relevant agencies of the two countries to ensure the prompt return of Russian citizens to their homeland. The signal and the rules in such cases are clear. They are always the same. Russia is systematically taking steps to maintain the effectiveness and reliability of its national strategic deterrence forces and assets, ensuring their technological maturity and adequacy to existing threats. The goal, of course, is to ensure our country's constant and unwavering readiness to defend its most fundamental and vital interests at all times, as well as to clearly and unmistakably demonstrate to any potential adversary that in response to any potential aggression on their part, Russia is capable of delivering a guaranteed and resolute response. As for advanced weapon systems such as the Burevestnik, as has been repeatedly and consistently stated by the Russian leadership over time, their development is considered a forced and necessary measure and is being carried out in order to maintain the overall strategic balance. In particular, our country is compelled to respond to the increasingly destabilizing and provocative actions of NATO in the field of missile defense. Among other things, such statements are probably also used to partially address internal problems in Riga, Tallinn, and Vilnius. They distract their own population with regular Russophobic outbursts. We are in contact with our Iranian friends on current international and regional issues. On the vast majority of these issues, as is well known, our views are close or coincide. We are also guided towards even more intensive coordination by the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement, which only recently entered into force on October 2nd of this year. According to this document, the parties contribute to strengthening peace and security in neighboring regions. This fully applies to the Middle East as well. Westerners are carrying out subversive activities not only against Russia's interests, as you mentioned, but also against other competitors who are also present in the region. At the same time, in their attempts to harm us or anyone else, they end up stepping on, alas, it's the same old mistakes. It is the civilian population of the African continent that suffers most from the short-sighted policy of flirting with terrorists, as well as the security of their own countries. The Kiev regime is cooperating with African terrorist groups. There, on the ground, on the soil of the African continent, they help carry out attacks by organizing the training of militants and supplying them with the very same Western weapons and military equipment that NATO countries supply and provide to Ukraine, all of which is completely paid for and financially supported by the European Union. In this way, President Zelensky and this entire group, this whole gang, confirm and clearly demonstrate their terrorist nature and intentions. Apparently, this is their chosen way of taking revenge on Africans for their objective, neutral stance on the situation and ongoing developments around Ukraine. In this way, it seems they are trying by any means possible to drag the African continent into a confrontation with Russia, without showing any regard for African interests.